games in the most recent releases have been somewhat jarring in the quality that they produce. Sure, games like Starfield are really fun and you can waste a lot of your time playing these games, but they just don't release with the same quality as games used to. And I don't even mean older games. I mean games from like 2018. Look at Insomniac's Spider-Man. That game came out in a really, really good condition. Mortal Kombat 11 came out in a really, really good condition. Most games back then, and by back then I mean literally a handful of years ago, released in really, really good quality condition. But it seems like ever since the release of Cyberpunk 2077, we've gotten very interchangeable qualities of games. However, one game that doesn't fall into this category is Sea of Stars. If you've missed this newest RPG, I feel bad. You should go play it. If you have Game Pass, it's on there. That's how I experienced the game. I'm gonna purchase a physical version of the game for my Switch because that's pretty much how the game was intended to be played. It's just so good, and you should spend the extra time, if you have any, to play this game. This new RPG is basically an SNES RPG. I'm talking levels of Chrono Trigger and Mario RPG. This game is riddled with those feelings, the emotions, the music, pretty much everything about it is crafted with so much inspiration that it's just so enjoyable. The original composer for Chrono Trigger actually has some tracks on this game, and it's almost impossible to tell which ones they are because every single one of the tracks in the game is just phenomenal. From the opening scenes to the first boss battle to figuring out where your friend has been. I'm not gonna spoil anything about this game because I want you to go enjoy it. The art style of this game is absolutely amazing. The pixel art is gorgeous. The landscapes have this 3D feel to them at a lot of different portions, and the battle systems are all really fun. There could be times where the battle system might not feel unique or might not feel complicated, but really no matter what level of the game you're playing, there's always going to be an extra factor to it. Now I'm going to try to say this without spoiling any portion of the game, but enemies of variety types have different variety attacks that make them weaker. So for example, some enemies, if you hit them with 2 light abilities and then a heavy ability, or a heavy ability, a light ability, and then another heavy ability, it makes them more vulnerable and it makes them weaker. This is really useful because if you're playing the game without a specific piece of equipment that makes it a lot more difficult, you're gonna need to know how to make these enemy types more vulnerable because the game is very unforgiving, and that's something I really enjoyed about it. There's like a default level of difficulty, and you can make the game easier on yourself if you equip certain items, if you equip certain relics or do combos correctly, or all this different stuff, or you could just make the game as hard as you possibly can on yourself and basically make it impossible to play. I really like the way the party system in this game works as well. You can very easily change between the main characters and just kind of fit your playstyle to however you want to play it. I found myself actually really enjoying Geralt, which is one of the members of the party you get a little later on, and for me, he was just a fun, really lovable character in general that I could relate to, oddly enough, and it just worked. Honestly, the story of this game at the start is kind of wishy-washy, where it takes a little bit of time to pick up, and really the first chapter of the game can feel very sluggish, but after that the game just picks up and feels like a blast through and through. There's no voice acting in this game whatsoever, so it feels like one of those old RPGs where you have to read the text, but the quality of writing here is pretty good across the board. It doesn't feel like it was written by a young group of writers, but it also doesn't feel like it was seasoned professionals. Something about the tone of each of the characters, maybe it was because they were trying to make it more relatable for younger people, or they were trying to evoke feelings of nostalgia, just works for me. There's not a lot of humor in this game that is really accustomed to the studio that crafted this game, but for myself, I just found every interaction I had with a character memorable, and that includes the first chapter of the game. So even though the game starts out really slow and starts out sluggish, you're going to feel the ramp up and you're going to feel where the story is going. There was really an odd sense of mystery that I was not expecting to be within the first chapter of the game, and for myself, I thoroughly enjoyed it. You start off the game in this weird mountainside and you just kind of get into it, but then there's this flashback that is really the first main chapter of the game, and that's where your first boss fight takes place. And then after that whole kind of section, the game just picks up. There's a campfire mechanic that is a lot of fun. A lot of this game is going to bring you back to games, especially like Chrono Trigger. It's kind of hard to miss the resemblance if you played that game, but something I really like about this game is it knows how to teeter between inspiration and copying, and it does it really well. In my newest direct video, I had a portion where I was talking about Super Mario RPG and how that game is coming out fairly soon, or the remake is coming out fairly soon, and they went over the combat system in that game, and I said a piece that I had to cut out because I realized that Super Mario RPG is older than Sea of Stars, but in that game, they have a very similar combat style to Sea of Stars. And again, Sea of Stars is not forgiving. So if you are mistiming your A buttons on Xbox or whatever the default button is to attack or block, you're gonna get punished for it. And if you're, again, not using a specific relic that makes the game more story oriented, you're gonna get punished even more for it. The game is only forgiving in where they place the campfires. I feel like there's a very good amount of them, so if you're really feeling like your party is being drained, or you really feel like you're just not kind of in the groove of the hard different portions of the game, you're gonna be able to heal up pretty easily. Again, I'm really trying to bounce around spoilers because this game is really good, and I really enjoyed the story. I like the mystery elements of it. It's a whole new world, at least I think it is, so there's not much background knowledge you need going into this game. Really, you don't need any. The two main characters of the story, which are the two on the box cover, are children of the solstice, and that's just a whole in itself, a whole kind of theory and experience. You learn that there are like basic humans in this game, as well as these weird creatures and mystical people with magic powers, and it just kind of explodes from there, but it's just a blast. I think my favorite character from the early game is the cloud that speaks. If you know who I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. So if you haven't played Sea of Stars, I highly recommend it. This is my first kind of review video. Again, I'm trying to bounce around spoilers. This in itself is a different sort of review because most reviews I would go into spoilers, but I want this game to perform better. It's already performing really well, especially for the time frame it came out in, but I want more people to experience it. If you have a Switch, I recommend getting it that way because it's probably intended to be played on the Switch just because of the way it feels. But if you do have Game Pass and you don't want to spend too much money because there's so many games coming out this year, get it on there. The reason I brought up performance and the way games release nowadays is because with my experience of Sea of Stars, there was no problems. I didn't have any audio issues. I didn't have any lag. I didn't have any bugs. I didn't have anything like that. And Sea of Stars is also one of those games that you can kind of pick up and play regardless of what other games you're playing. So if you're trying to find a game to play between now and Alan Wake 2 or now and Assassin's Creed Mirage, and you don't want to play Payday 3 or Lives of P, I recommend playing this game. Or if you're trying to build a back catalog for the rest of this year, please put this game at a very high spot. If you're going into December and you don't want to play Avatar like me, just play Sea of Stars because I'm definitely going to be replaying this game in December. I think the last bit of news I heard on how this game was performing was it had sold 100,000 units after a couple days of being out. And again, it was out the day before Starfield's early access came out. So there's all you really need to know about that. This game screams nostalgia in the best ways possible. It's gonna make you feel young, and if you never experienced JRPGs or RPGs back on the SNES or early Nintendo games, in early Nintendo days, this game is gonna make you feel it. You really should play Sea of Stars because it's just probably one of the better games to come out this year. If you told me that at the beginning of the year and you told me that I would enjoy this game more than I enjoyed Starfield and more than I enjoyed most games that came out this year, I would have called you nuts. But this is where we are, and that's not a slight at Starfield. I really like that game too. So thank you guys for watching. Again, different types of videos. I'm gonna try to do a Mortal Kombat review here in a couple days, and I'm trying to upload more. So thank you guys so much. Check out the last videos on screen somewhere now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.